All right, good morning. I will now call to order the Monday, December 16th, 2024 Town Council meeting. If you would, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item on the agenda is the approval of the December 2nd, 2024 Town Council meeting memoranda. A copy's been posted. Are there questions or comments from councilors?
I have a correction. Sorry. Page 48. It says inaudible. It should say John Stair.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve
Second. First from Councilor Sampson, second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is the approval of the December 16, 2024 claims. Are there any questions from councilors? If there are none, I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the December 16, 2024 claims.
Second from Councilor Norris, a second from Councilor Stein. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. All right, up next is a request to speak on agenda item. I have one request to speak. Amy, do you have any more down there?
No, I do not.
All right, so we have Michael Stroll. Michael, if you would, when you just come up to the microphone, you'll have 3 minutes. If you would, just state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start your timer.
I probably won't take 3 minutes, but I appreciate the time. My name is Mike
right.
Stroll. I live at 755 Sugarbush Drive here in Zionsville. Been a resident of Zionsville for 23 years now. Raised my family here, love this community, and I'm here today to speak actually in support of the proposed sewer rate increase, which is not something you wake up at 7:30 on a Monday morning and hope to do, but I'll do it. In my professional capacity, I'm a senior vice president with Citizens Energy Group in Indianapolis, where I've worked for nearly 25 years now, the last 13 or so of which have been managing the water and wastewater utilities in the city of Indianapolis and in Westfield. So I tell you that I'm not here in my professional capacity. I'm here as a resident, but I tell you that to let you know I have a little bit of experience in understanding what it takes to manage wastewater systems. And first, I'd like to commend Lance and his team. They've done a really nice job of managing this utility for a long time without a rate increase. I think it's been like 14 years or so. And wastewater utilities are very difficult to manage. They're very capital-intensive businesses. They have lots of mechanical systems that fail over time. Systems needed to be upgraded to support growth in the community and to support economic development. Lift stations need to be expanded. Electricity and chemical costs are the big drivers behind them. So they're really quite necessary. Nobody likes doing it. You as council members don't like approving anything that raises costs for citizens. Lance and his team don't like recommending it, and certainly residents and customers don't like paying it, but they are a necessary requirement of running these systems. So I looked at the Crow and Baker Tilly studies. They are both very recognized and credible consultants in the world of utility rate making analysis, and I think they've done a nice job. And so I know it's a large increase, and I know it's hard for you all to support, but at the same time, you're doing the community a favor by supporting that and expanding those systems. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, we will move on to the Mayor Administration Update. We have Mayor Stair with us this morning.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
First of all, I'm happy to tell you that we have a new executive assistant to introduce today. And to get her, we dove deep into the Zionsville pool and found a lifelong resident to fill that role. Jenna Butler, she's in the audience here, sitting next to Alexa. She grew up here. She's a graduate of Zionsville High School. She and her husband are raising their 2 children here and sending them to the same schools that she went to when she grew up. And today is her first day. So we're going to make sure that Jenna gets around to meet all of you. And I have no doubt that she will be a great addition to our staff and also a great forward-facing person for the town, representing the town to the people of Zionsville. So Jenna, welcome. The next item I have is the S&P report. In your packet is the Standard & Poor's report that was issued on December 6th. Now, just a little bit of background here that I think is important. S&P lowered our credit rating in October of 2022 from AA+ to AA with a negative outlook. At the time, S&P cited a failure of internal controls, a lack of transparency, poorly performing financial software, failure to comply with state reporting standards, and internal disputes between elected officials. And it's been no secret, it's been a focus of mine, my administration, and the town council to turn this around. And we have addressed all of these issues head-on, including hiring an employee in finance whose primary focus is to make sure that all monthly and annual engagement with the state is up to date, and I can tell you this morning that that is the case. So, in recognition of those efforts, S&P has removed the negative outlook from our bond rating, which now stands at AA with a neutral outlook. And in its report, and I think this is very important, S&P said notably, the town recently implemented a long-term capital and financial plan to assist in budget development and the strategic spending of reserves on capital projects. It plans to update this document annually. In addition, over the past year, the management team has adopted an internal control, investment, debt management, and reserve policy. This is a very positive development for our town, and it's an indication of the marketplace that we are on track with our finances. And now what we need to do is show consistency over the long term. This is one of those things that it doesn't take long to lose it, but it takes a while to get it back. So S&P will continue to monitor and may consider upgrading our credit rating in the coming years. And as the fiscal body of the town, I just want to say I believe that you deserve much of the credit for this, and I want to thank you all for your good work on behalf of the town to help get us to a better place financially. The next item that I have is the board and commission appointments for 2025. Also in your package, you have my appointments for the various boards and commissions for next year. I have 35 positions to fill before the end of the year, and I'm not going to name them all, but I will say that they do represent a cross-section of our town. We have Republican and Democrats, men and women, rural and urban residents, and I believe they are among the best of us in Zionsville. It is always impressive to me to see the number of gifted and experienced and accomplished people we have in Zionsville, and their willingness to step up when you ask. At the same time, I want to acknowledge those whose terms will end at the end of December. Thank you so much for your efforts on behalf of our town. Your efforts have truly made us better as a town, so I want to thank everybody who's willing to step up and do that. The new board and commission members will take their seats on January 1st. One other quick note here, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, it's underway with a new term, and we have 22 students engaged. They have already met with several counselors and other elected leaders and department heads. They are planning a trip to the State House to meet with our state lawmakers in this spring. They're also working on a service project for the town, and they'll present to you on April 21st what they have learned and offering some ideas for the town based on their point of view. It's not going to be a long, drawn-out presentation, but I think it'll be a very pointed presentation. And I think if you spend some time with these young people, you see how impressive they are. And I'm sure that this will not be a waste of time. It'll be a good use of time, not only for this body, but for the town to hear what our young people have to say. One important note as I sign off here, the Town Hall will be closed for the holidays on December 24th and December 25th, and also January 1st. We will be open for business all other days on the normal business days. So that's all I have this morning. I just want to take a moment, though, and thank the council for your positive engagement this year. I think it's been a very positive year, and I think we have a great foundation to build upon for 2025. And I just want you to know that I appreciate all of you very much. So thank you. Any questions or any thoughts?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, first item of old business is the consideration of an ordinance to rename the People of Zionsville for the Aesthetics of Zionsville, or pizzazz, to the Zionsville Tree Board. This is ordinance 2024-41. This is a final reading. We certainly have folks available to talk on this. Again, this is the second time we've heard this, so any questions or comments from councilors?
Mr. President, I'll just add, there is, in the composition of the committee, there is a point where it suggests that the town council should appoint one non-voting secondary school student as an advisor I'll be working with the mayor and the deputy mayor to try to identify that student so that we do have a complete group, but otherwise I have no other comments to make.
Perfect. If there are no other comments, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve ordinance 2024-41 on final reading with one slight change in section 31.25 A4. It does require a space between a non-voting advisory member of the committee, so that's just the only minor change.
I see that.
Second.
I've got a first from Counselor McElderry, second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Amy, do you see that spot on there, or Heather, do you see that?
Yes,
Okay,
we talked about it. Thank you.
great. All right. Next item of old business is consideration of an ordinance establishing the non-DLGF budget for 2025. We have Cindy Poor, Director of Finance and Records, here for counselors if there are questions.
Good morning.
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 Here, so sorry, hang on one second. Do all of you have the presentation in front of you? Yes. Okay. Before I get started, there was a revised ordinance that was sent out on Friday. Did everybody receive that? Okay. Okay. So to get started on the 2025 non-DLGF budget, there's a few things that I want to go through and point out. The first is that the non-DLGF budget is much different from the budget that we passed in October. This one, your revenues are not going to equally offset your expenditures. And there are many reasons for this. One, a lot of this budget is made up of fee-based funds that may sit for a while as they accumulate before we decide that we need to appropriate anything out of them. It could also be bond proceeds or grant proceeds where you get one disbursement, but the project may be over multiple years, so that revenue is not accounted for every year. But the main thing to remember is that, you know, the expenditures are generally going to be greater than what the revenues are showing, okay? A little bit of history going back to 2022 shows you what previous non-DLGF budgets that were approved and how the revenues and the expenses compare to each other. I will say I had the updated slide deck just on the expenses. In our Finance Committee meeting on Friday with the discussion between Parks and Counselor Sampson, we did decide to decrease the one of the park impact fees by $225,000. So the expense line is actually $11,039,429.63. So that's the amount of the ordinance that you received on Friday that you have in front of you. The estimated amount of revenues for '25 is $6,695,270. And here again, you know, even when we do budgets, these are estimates. We go through historical information and so forth, but it's never 100%. So, and that's the same with estimating revenues. In 2025, I know there was a question about the $15,000 from the golf course and the park. That was correct. Next year, the revenue that we get into from the golf course is split 25-75. So 25% of it goes to the park, and 75% of it goes to the golf course fund. The minimum amount that we would receive from the golf course is $50,000, because in the agreement, it's $50,000 or 10% of the greens fees, whichever is greater. So what we've calculated this on is the $50,000.
The greens fees were about $300,000 last year, is that correct?
Correct, yes. So the $35,000 for the golf course has been added to the revenues of, for the 2025 budget.
That was what was missing last time when I was asking where the 50 added up. It only showed 15.
There were 3 increases to park donation estimates as well for 2025. Memorial bench, there was a change in their general and their memorial tree. For expenditures, I want to point out that in the original one, I had accounted for the RDC bonds, and the reason for that was I hadn't received the spending plan for RDC yet and wanted to make sure that those bond payments were accounted for. Since we had to go back in and redo some of this, I took those out because I have received the RDC spending plan, and so I took the bond payments out of this, which also lowered the overall expenses. Just
Cindy,
to point out, yes.
when you say you pulled those out, so you were waiting to get the spending plan from the RDC to make sure they had the revenue to cover it on their end?
Right, and I knew they would have the revenue. It's just that I hadn't seen the spending plan from RDC to make sure that they had those payments budgeted.
Okay.
So I just was trying to cover my base there.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know you had a question as far as the transfers and what those lines consist of. The EMS transfer line is, the EMS fund is used to bring in the ambulance revenue. And that's the only thing that fund is used for. So periodically throughout the year, once that fund gets to a certain balance, we transfer that money out and we put it into the fire operating account. And so, but we have to estimate how much we're going to do throughout the year. So that's what that transfer is. The other transfers are for bond payments. The Zionsville EDA transfer, that goes over to the 2010 Sewage Works SRF debt. The Oak Street helps pay for the town hall lease payment. And then we do monthly transfers out of the wastewater fund, and those funds help pay the Sewage Works revenue bond of 2015 and both the 2019 Sewage Works bonds. The total amount, here again, the total amount of the budget that we're presenting is $11,039,429.63.
So those EMS funds are from the ambulance runs?
The ambulance revenues. We have a billing service that takes care of the billing for that. And so we have a separate fund set up for that, strictly for that billing service to work with. And, but we don't pay anything out of that fund whatsoever.
Aren't we anticipating that number to go up this year with the fee increase? Is that reflected in the budget?
Yes. And even, you know, with the revenues, you know, even if it isn't, that's something, here again, they're estimates, and it's nothing that we, you know, unless there's a lot more and we need to do an additional, which you'll see later on, out of the transfer fund. I mean, it's still, we can still move the money back and forth.
I would anticipate that to be a higher transfer number if we're anticipating higher fees. I don't know, am I not thinking about that right? I mean, if we're going up on fees because we've raised that, wouldn't that increase our?
Well, and we also account for that revenue. We don't, when we're budgeting, that revenue is accounted for in the DLGF fund or budget, because we account for it in the operating fund for the fire department. But
As a fee, it's in the DLGF?
as revenue, because here again, the fund that we're transferring out of is basically just kind of a pass-through. Yeah. So a summary, the 2025 estimated revenues are $6,695,270, and the proposed budget is $11,039,429.63, which is, the budget's at 40% less than 2024. Estimated revenues are about 8% less than what was for 2024. Any questions?
Cindy, you mentioned that the EMS would transfer that fund out, those dollars, and there's some kind of trigger or some price point of when we do that.
Right, we just
curious, like, what's that number? Or
usually we like to leave around 50,000 in that account, and then once we get a fair amount over that, then we'll move over the money.
And one other question, it says the Fund 4446 on Oak Street EDA transfer. Mm-hmm. What's that EDA stand for? Like,
Economic Development Area.
area, okay, so I think that's important just to kind of call out as it's
And those were ones that I some of them I think that I took out, but since there was President Plunkett had a question, I went ahead and I wanted to put a description in there as to what those were for.
that's great, thank you.
Cindy, if there are parts of this that are not approved, that just simply sits in the account and it can come back next year for an additional appropriation, correct? I mean, it's not like this is lost money.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would have some questions around, I know I asked this last time about the parks impact fee, both old and new, and I noticed there's been some changes, and I understand why those changes have taken place, but I guess the question I have is, the Parks Board is its own entity, right? I mean, it approves and recommends and, et cetera, for the Parks Department. All other departments have to come to the town council for approval, which is why we're in this spot. And I feel like there's some really good detail around what a lot of this stuff is being used for. And I guess my question, and maybe it's for Jared, but has there been an approved impact fee spending plan by the Parks Board?
I don't know if, Jared may need to answer that. I don't know if there's been a specific spending plan for the impact fees. I'll let Jared answer that.
Good morning, Council. Jared Logsdon, Superintendent of Parks and Recreation. While there has not been an official plan developed for the impact fee, there was both an action plan developed in the 5-year master plan for prioritizing projects, as well as the narrative to utilize impact fees whenever it's appropriate for one of those projects. So that's exactly what we're proposing within this budget request for 2025. As we look at the action plan, Carpenter Nature Preserve Phase 1 was proposed in 2023 to begin building into budgets, and the Mulberry concession stand was built into the 2024 budget. So playing catch up on those projects and utilizing impact fees as they are appropriate. But concerning an actual plan, we did have a public discussion at the most recent Park Board meeting concerning the board's comfort with issuing this many impact fees and realizing that will leave less for future projects, and it was understood and discussed publicly and then proceeded with the vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, and I know this is kind of it's been kind of a sticking point for me, is just the timeline, the phases, et cetera, for Carpenter. And I know we're lowering the Mulberry Fields concession stand number to a number that was presented to the Parks Board. I just wonder why we wouldn't request an official impact fee plan for these spends, knowing that once they're gone, they're gone, right? And again, as we just talked about before, even if they're pulled out until you have an opportunity to get that spending plan done with the Parks Board, so that there's just another layer of accountability. Because right now, like, the Parks Board is your accountability. They're the ones that you answer to, and the ones that would give us direction, certainly in a spend like this, as opposed to all of the other departments come to us for those requests. I just feel like that's probably something that needs a little bit more, little bit more due diligence as it relates to that particular spend. I understand the Mulberry Fields concession stand. I'm assuming that's already out for RFP or you guys are already getting responses for that, or?
Yes, we have bid and have selected an award
Okay.
contingent on next year's funding.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's something that, to your point, it was formally introduced and supported by the Parks Board. From my perspective, I personally would like to see, I have no problem with the budget as it's presented here, maybe just after the next Parks Board meeting or the next couple Parks Board meetings, when you have an impact fee spending plan for the rest of that, I would feel more comfortable reappropriating that next year for those projects and having a little bit more of a dialogue around it. So.
Yeah, I actually, adding on to that, have requested Jared to be more forthright with contingency fees and not just presenting the numbers that don't include an amount that he's already calculated and anticipated, because I think that's where, for us to rely on our Parks Board, we need to know that they're getting the full picture as well. And that's kind of the pushback that I had from last time was, I watched your Parks Board meeting, this is the amount you said. That's the amount we want to approve as a council. I mean, if you looked at his original ask, there was a 15% contingency request. And I just felt like that seemed a bit broad, and that it would, in my mind, if we're signing off on amounts, I felt like we should have that belief that our board that we've helped select at the parks level had a chance to know about those contingency fees as well. So that's just some conversation that Jared and I have been in with Mayor Stair, and it seems that that message has been heard, and he has said he would be more forthcoming with contingency fees, which is why the new write-out we got showed that he had 2% contingency built into the 2012 impact fees and about 8% into the 2022. I did notice that the Carpenter Nature Preserve restroom went up, and that was a point I had talked about with he had listed items such as earthwork and utilities and foundational costs, but it didn't seem that he had put any of those costs in. And I said, I feel like we're just going to run into wondering how you went over your budget, but you still had 3 line items. So I did not anticipate you to move the Carpenter Nature Preserve amount up to a round number that matched the Mulberry. I see some of the logic behind it, but I would have liked more of a numbers-based move instead of backing into it with this is the money I have left in that 2012. That's just me voicing my pushback at you, but I do think knowing that he can't spend these items on anything except the restroom and concession stand from the 2012, I'm going to trust the process, but I'm going to watch the process because what he doesn't use goes back into that fund. It can't go for other things, so there's kind of the check and balance there. But just we as a council should continue to have someone watch the Parks Board presentations so that we know that we have someone watching over the due diligence of the process. Again, it's just, it felt a little bit backed into for the 2012 impact fees, but I do think we have great projects that we're working on, and I do support having our parks improved. It's just, you know, the numbers part is what speaks to me as well. So thank you for considering my request.
So the Mulberry concession stand goes from 1.2 down to 980, is that right?
Correct. And just to clarify, the number discussed at the December meeting is truly only for the award of that potential contract. It doesn't include any contingency.
I think that is mention it to your board, because if someone voting had a gut level of, I'm not voting for a penny over $1 million, and then they're presented the 980, but it might be 1.2. It's just, that's the clarity I was asking for. But I do feel like we're communicating well, and that we all just need to continue to watch.
I have a question real quick on Fund 6607 for the golf course, the construction for $100,000. That is for the restroom on hole 6, is that correct?
Yes, it would be for a pavilion with 2 individual stall restrooms that are ADA.
And that will be a project that will be completed in 2025?
That is dependent on the operator. So within the contract with the operator for the golf course, they are able to request up to $100,000 a year for capital improvements to the golf course. So that is that process. They made a proposal to the board, which was approved. So that was incorporated into this document.
And what is the management company's contribution to that project? Is it a 50-50?
At least 50%, yep. But I believe it's slightly more, as their projections were slightly over 200,000.
Thank you.
Chair, that reminds me of, and maybe you can clarify this, in the contract with the golf course, I believe it was a 5-year contract, but there was a stipulation that if improvements to AV, I think it was $100,000, it continued the contract. Can you explain that again to me?
Yeah, so there is, as they complete capital projects from the actual completion date, that extends the contract to a full 5 years again. So it can never go beyond 5, but that end date can continue to move based on capital improvements to the course.
Even though the town is, are you supplying that, the $100,000 to help pay for the restrooms, is that counted towards the AV? So the town is essentially paying for the AV to increase their own lease term?
So, you know, these capital improvements are going to stay with the golf course even if the management team were to lead. So the funds utilized for those requests are from the enterprise fund of golf course. So it's never going to be tax funds or anything else. It's strictly golf course proceeds from the past funding future developments. And Cindy mentioned the split, so each year, a little bit more will be replenished into that fund, but once it's spent down, the contract, or the operator won't have an opportunity to request it until it's built back up. So there are some level of checks and balances within that fund as well, just to its limited size.
I think it's around about $380,000.
Yep.
I think it's $380,000. So if we do 100,000.
That's what's in the fund now?
Yeah.
I think I requested that last meeting, was a
Yeah.
balance on that. So about 380,000?
Yes, and it'll receive 35,000 this year from this year's, well, actually 100%, sorry, 50,000 this year.
50, right?
Yep.
So we'll bring in 50, and then you can give them 100 if they match a 50% project.
Yep.
So,
Wait, it got 50 or did it only get 15 or 35? Which one of those?
This year is a prorated year because they started in April. But for the first year of the contract, it was 100% of that 10% green fees or 50,000. Next year, it'll be a 75-25 split with the non-operating, or the non-reverting operating of parks. And after that, it'll be a 50-50 split.
Thanks, Jared.
So I guess I do have another question about the old impact fee. It says that we've got construction for 2.014713, and if the Mulberry Fields concession stand went from 1.2 down to 980, why are we still advertising for the 2?
He put it into a 2% contingency fee for $54,000.
The goal is still to utilize 2012 first for applicable amenities, because that fund is not going to grow anymore. We have a new impact fee plan, so now we're shifting to the 22. So it's to sunset the 2012. 22 will continue to grow until we establish the 27, and then move toward, always moving to the current impact fee.
This request went down to 375.
So what we're talking about is the old and the new impact fees. The old impact fee has a budget spend of $2 million. The new impact fee has a $600,000 spend. The $600,000 spend for the new impact is the impact fee 2022 for the Carpenter Nature Preserve for parking, trails, shelter. The remaining $2 million is split between Carpenter Nature Preserve, restroom pavilion, and then the Mulberry Fields concession stand, assuming the Mulberry Fields concession stand is still $1.2 million. Because you add up the 1.2 and the 814, and you still get the $2 million. So there wasn't an adjustment to the Mulberry Fields concession stand going from 1.2 to 980.
That was changed in my memo. So if you look at that, and as well as the 2022 request has reduced essentially in an equivalent amount to the Mulberry concession stand change. So again, a restroom could be funded from either the 2012 or the 2022 impact fees, so utilizing 2022 as our contingency for those two very large projects.
So the ordinance that I have for my packet,
Oh, they sent something this weekend.
There was an updated ordinance that shows the $225,000 decrease that was sent out Friday after we had the meeting with Counselor Sampson.
okay.
So this number down here,
So the 2022
this number goes down to that.
was reduced down to 375,000 from 600. And
Changed it right.
Amy does have those updated
Right.
ordinances.
You would have, with the paper packets, you still have the old ones.
Well, that would make sense as to why I have an inaccurate budget. All right, any other questions for counselors?
I just have a comment to the overall process. Sounded really loud. We talked earlier, Mayor, you talked about our D&B and that there was a lack of transparency in the past that we've worked very hard to overcome, and it has already shown that it's improved our rating. As it pertains to this budget, I just think that if we have nothing to hide, then let's be overly forthcoming with the information. And when I look down at a budget that shows revenues far less than our expenses, and I understand it, but for our conversations that we've had amongst ourselves, I'm very comfortable with this. But the appearance of it, to somebody who doesn't have the privilege to have those conversations that I've had, would look down at this and go, this is a bad thing. We're $5 million under budget. And so there's no information for the public to consume to say, oh, I get it. Here's where the shortfall is going to be coming from. And so I don't know if it's footnotes, if it's an addendum or something to be able to show the public, where the additional funds are going to come from if they choose to have it. I just am concerned because to me, I don't want anybody to ever say this seems like a shell game because we're pulling money from these funds that were from way back. It's true, we are, and it's legitimate, and the budget works. But it doesn't give the appearance that it works. And so that's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want anybody to look at us going, they don't know what they're doing. Look at this budget. The budget's going to, it's just a budget to start with, and we know no budgets are ever perfectly correct.
We'll work to fine tune that.
I just want,
Yeah.
its appearance. And I think when it goes back to the transparency that D&B referenced, the fact that we're giving the information, even though it's not required of us, takes us a step ahead when it comes to transparency. I think that, allowing people who live in Zionsville to see the full picture benefits everybody. That's just my opinion.
I think that's why we asked for the fund balances last time. So I do think one thing that would have been good to point out is that the 2.14 million in the 2012, it in itself is one of, if the difference is 5 million, I thought it was a little less than that, but that's 2.14 of it. And I think that's something where we could be footnoting or somehow adding. I know it's not required in the budget process, but for, like you said, just disclosure to people who do click on the links in the agendas, because there are many, many people who do, because they've called me and referenced things that they've seen. It would be worthy of their attention so that they can answer their questions as well.
Okay.
I agree, even on that cover sheet where you just show, expense and revenue, even just another line of revenue, former revenue from previous funds could just show how that balances out.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions or comments from counselors? I would go back to, I'm inclined to approve or support this budget. I just feel like specifically the conversations we've had this morning, every other department, every other group, every line on here seems pretty specific. And I just, personally for me, I would feel more comfortable approving the park impact fee money beyond the 980 that was approved and supported by the Parks Board. I would feel more comfortable approving those after there's a Parks Board approval of an impact study, impact fee spending, I should say. So that's my personal thought. I'm certainly open to thoughts and comments from counselors.
The only last thing I had seen that was a big number was the sewage works construction of the 1.2. And, I have all my trust in you, Lance. Have we had that number specifically been put out to the public? Or I know we have a lot going on over at wastewater.
Those are bond proceeds for project.
Correct. That was a lot of steps for me to say Cindy was right. That is the balance left over from the 2019 sewer works bond that was initially visioned to pay for 4 projects, including Holiday Farms and extending sewer capacities up Willow Road. That remaining amount, we just got word from a legal interpretation that when you borrow money, you have to tell them specifically what you're going to use it for, right? And we have a legal opinion now that we can use that 1.2 million for our main lift station upgrades. So we're very excited about that because that's going to ease the pressure on the sewer rate and the demands, in sort of phase 2 as we get into those 5th and 6th years of the spending plan for the wastewater utility.
All right, any other questions from counselors? Having none, I will make a motion to approve the 2025 non-DLGF budget with the amendment to lower Fund 4672, the old impact fee, down to the 980 for the Mulberry Fields concession, and removing the 600 from the new impact fee until there is a impact fee study spend approved by the Parks Board, and also as previously amended on final reading.
Second.
I have a second from Counselor Norris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance regarding a sewer rate increase. This is ordinance 2024-43. This is a final reading. We have Lance, Director of DPW here.
Good morning again. I've asked Danny Stogsdill to join me up here. I wanted to recognize him and his staff. It is through their diligence, ingenuity, expertise, and professionalism that has allowed the sewer system to continue operating at the high level it has in these lean years. So rather than a wave to the back of the room, I wanted him up here front and center as we consider this final action. And you may be tired of hearing from me alone, so perhaps he has something to contribute. 2 meetings ago, you heard from our town accounting firm, Crow. They walked through the process at arriving at an updated sewer rate, which has not changed in 14 years. And of course, that rate proposed, the single-family residential rate, is increasing from $44.50 to $56.85. Again, this is a fixed or a flat rate, as the town has utilized for a number of years, probably around 20 years. At your last meeting, 2 weeks ago, you introduced this ordinance amending the rate, and we had a rather valuable, I think, and robust discussion on some of the perceptions around a fixed rate and why it is really not in the best interest of either the ratepayers or the added burdens it places on the administration of the utility. And I thought I would share something so you don't think this is just us talking. This is directly off the IURC website from the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor. Most sewer utilities, most costs, including the cost of wastewater collection and treatment, do not vary appreciably over time. Any costs that might vary would likely be minimal and would balance out over time. In most cases involving metered wastewater rates, a large portion of the bill is set as a consistent flat amount. So recognizing that you cannot be an expert in your own community, I thought I'd share that because that does come directly from the IURC. So your action tonight is to conduct a public hearing, or this morning, getting a little ahead of myself,
Feels like we've been here forever.
is to hold your public hearing as a non-regulated utility, non-regulated by the IURC. You are charged with establishing fair, equitable, defensible, and sustainable rate for the utility that you own and manage. So you will open your hearing, listen from your ratepayers, close your hearing, and then take action on what you have before you. And we will, of course, be here for any way we can support you throughout this morning.
Thank you, Lance. Are there any questions from counselors?
Let's have one real quickly. Yeah, as you've mentioned, we went 10 years between rate increases.
14.
Thoughts on how long this rate would be in place before we potentially
Thank you
would
for
need
asking
another?
that. I highlighted this at the introduction. I appreciate you drawing that to another audience's attention. Within this ordinance includes an intent to address this rate or evaluate it at least every 4 years. That doesn't mean necessarily there will be a rate increase every 4 years, but we will make the pointed effort to make sure we don't get as far behind the curve as we are.
So a minimum of 4 years, it would be in
Correct.
place.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, as Lance mentioned, this is a public hearing. I approve publication of the notice of public hearing. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. If there's any members of the public who would like to speak. Seeing none, I'll close the public meeting. Any other questions or comments from counselors? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to approve ordinance 2024, excuse me, -43 on final reading.
May I offer just as amended? There's a few non-substantive revisions, but they're just grammatical.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion. I will make a motion to approve on final reading ordinance.
Second.
A first from Counselor Norris, a second from Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next on the agenda is the consideration of an ordinance establishing a disability committee. This is ordinance 2024-44. This is also a final reading. Are there any questions from counselors? We have Deputy Mayor with us this morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only thing I will point out is their one substantive change is to add an additional non-voting member who may be appointed by the town council and may be a member of the town council, as was suggested at the last meeting.
Any other questions from counselors or any comments? Having none, I will move to approve on final reading ordinance 2024-44 as amended.
Second.
A second from Counselor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance regarding political signs. If there are questions, certainly I can answer those, and Heather can as well. But as we talked about last time, this is just simply an opportunity to limit the amount, the total number of political campaign signs at a at the town hall polling location. So,
And we kept it at 2 from last week, or 2 weeks ago's meeting. I just wanted to mention that because we can always increase it if we get feedback that that's prohibitive.
Two
And I-
questions, Jason. And include also, can we only, do we only have jurisdiction here, or we can't do it at the library?
just here, yeah.
And then on the 2, was there a sign? Was there a size of the signs? Are we running the risk of large signs now?
There's a sign limitation.
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
On the first page.
2 feet by 3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, 24 by 36. All right, any questions from counselors? I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-45 on final reading.
Second.
A second from Counselor McElderry. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. All right, up next is consideration and ordinance revising the nepotism and conflict of interest rules. This is ordinance 2024-46. If there are questions, Heather certainly is available to answer those. If there's anything from counselors, I would entertain a motion.
And there are just a couple of revisions in the findings. We just added the words to boards, commissions, and committees, and then there's a few non-substantive cleanup items.
So would this also be as amended, Heather?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve on final reading ordinance 2024-46 with amendments.
45.
I got a first from Counselor Stein.
46.
A second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance to repeal inactive boards and commissions. Again, Heather or myself can speak to this. I know there were a couple of changes on this as well. Heather, if you want to maybe.
There are. In Section 2, or Section 3A, we added for a committee, board, a commission, or committee that is organized by the town via ordinance, because there are some that are executive order. And additionally, we added that they may be dissolved by the mayor instead of shall, giving some discretion to look at whether or not a committee needs to remain. And then lastly, also in that section, we added some new language to say that 30 days prior to any dissolution shall be distributed to members of the town council for review. The town council may object to the dissolution of any board, commission, or committee on the dissolution list by a majority vote of the town in a public meeting prior to the expiration of the 30-day notice period. Again, that gives more transparency in terms of what would be dissolved.
All right, any questions from counselors? Approve ordinance 2024-47 as amended.
Second.
A second from Counselor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Last old business item is a consideration of an ordinance amending the Pathways Committee. This is ordinance 2024-48. This is also a final reading, and There were not really a lot of changes to this one.
There's one change in section D3, and it just strikes the word "in order" just for better grammar. Consider budgeting and finance feasibility to make recommendations to the town council upon request.
Did we not want anyone to be a 2-year member?
We discussed that with the Pathways Committee, and we all kind of determined that with it being kind of a volunteer committee, that some people want 1 year, some people want to stay on 5 years, and we didn't want to limit it or forcibly say, hey, you're on for 2 years. So I think ultimately, this ordinance as amended, we'll work with all the parameters that are included with the 1 year, as
You think
as
you'll
well as the
just-
budget, as well as the changes presenting in the second quarter to try and get on the budget radar. So we had a meeting this week. It was a great meeting, but I think we went over this at that meeting, and I think it was understood that 1 year still is a good baseline. And actually, with that, I think I'll motion to approve the ordinance 2024-48 with amendments, if you're asking.
First from Counselor Melton.
Second.
Second from Counselor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. All right, first item of new business is a consideration of 2025 appointments to various boards and commissions and committees. This is Resolution 2024-17. This is not an ordinance, it's a resolution, and only requires one vote. I want to take a minute and just thank all the counselors for your feedback on various appointments and recommendations to boards and commissions. I want to thank the folks who have previously served on boards and commissions, and obviously the folks that would like to be on and are being appointed for the next year, and in some cases the next couple of years. Certainly, not lost on me is the impact that a lot of folks have on this town for decades to come when they serve on boards and commissions, and these decisions often are not easy, and we have an engaged council and an engaged community, and it's just important that we make sure we consider consider all voices and make sure that we're doing the right job up here from the council seat. These boards and commissions, like I said, impact the town for decades, and I appreciate everybody's input and engagement. So, questions or comments from anybody or counselors? Having none, I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-17. Second. A second from Counselor Norris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next item of new business is a petition for an alley vacation. This is ordinance 2024-49. We have Roger Kilmer here with us today to go through this. And do we also have the petitioners? Are they? Okay, perfect.
Good morning, councilors. Roger Kilmer, Senior Planner with the town. Before you this morning for your consideration is a request to vacate a portion of a 10-foot wide north-south alley located between 4th and 5th Streets, south of Ash Street. The petitioner, Dunnett's 2020 Trust, represented by Scott Dunnetts, filed this petition with Amy Lacey in her office, and Amy asked for some assistance in processing this through, and so that's where we step in and try to help out. Should be noted that, and I will put this up on the screen for you so we can talk about. The portion of the alley under consideration has been highlighted in yellow. Again, it is a 10-foot wide strip measuring 120 feet southward from Ash Street down to another alley.
This was all platted within Cross's 4th addition to the town. So it is a platted public right-of-way. And as Indiana code requires, any consideration for vacations of public ways comes to the local governing body, which is the town council in this situation. Should be noted that in addition to the Dunnett's request, the additional property owners let me clarify, the Dunnett's own the property shown as 445 West Ash Street, so that's on the east side of the alley. The owners of the property on the west side, addressed as 475 West Ash, family is the Voigts. They have also submitted a consent to this vacation. That was part of the material, so they are not in opposition to this. Those 2 properties are the only 2 properties that would be directly affected by this vacation. It is an unimproved right-of-way. Materials for this requested vacation were distributed to all members of our TAC committee. That includes town departments as well as emergency services, fire, police, and also utility agencies that serve the area. No one responded with an opposition to this. However, Department of Public Works as well as 2 of the utilities did request that this, even if this request for vacation would be approved, that the area be retained as an easement for utilities, either existing or future use. So staff is not opposed to the requested vacation of this, but do recommend and suggest that the area be retained as an easement for those utilities. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have, and again, the Dunnetts are here to answer questions as well.
I hate to, I hate to have you come up to the microphone just to ask one question, but the recommendation from the town to maintain the area as a utility easement, does that impact your desire at all?
Not at all. Our plan, we've been here for about 4 years in the village and enjoying it. We have 2 homes in Tulsa and in here, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and here. I'm retiring, so we're going to be here more. What we'd like to do is add a porch toward the front to the north. In order to do that, according to Todd Rotman, who's doing our design phase, we needed an additional square footage for coverage of the 35% coverage, and that's why we're requesting the alley vacation, just to add additional land that we can cover on the front with a porch.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Will that require a variance if that is an easement to put the porch in?
My understanding from Mr. Rotman is that we would be below the 35% without the need for a variance.
I was going to ask the same question, so thank you, Jason. Is anyone, I mean, obviously this is really just impacting 2 homes there. Is anyone else using this alley? Do we see any concern about having it no longer available? I guess
It's just between the Voigts and us, and we've talked to the Voigts, and they don't seem to have any concern for that. We're going to leave it as it is. We're not changing anything in the alleyway.
Question for Roger, real quick. Public right-of-way versus the utility easement, what is the use change with regards to what you can do in that space? Or is there a change? I know it goes split now, goes to their parcels and allows them to utilize the additional percentages for lot coverage, but is there a use change between utility easement and public right-of-way with regards to plantings and structure?
Theoretically, yes, there is a difference. In practicality, in this situation, again, this is an unimproved alley, and there are already utilities overhead lines in that area. So the change from this being vacated from a public right-of-way to an easement, in practical application, there would be no change in use here.
So again, I guess I would want to reiterate the fact that because it's becoming a utility easement, or it's going to be maintained as a utility easement, that nothing should be built in that easement so that there can be access by the utility company in the future. And I just wanted to clarify that if we're going to do this and give this public right-of-way, vacate it, just want to make sure for the record that we understand what that really means from the usable standpoint of it versus the theoretical lot coverage.
You are correct.
Fantastic, thank you.
Is this currently like a rock road for the alley? Does it currently covered in stone, or is someone?
The alleyway? No, it's primarily grass. There is a small wall within that area that we share between the voids, but otherwise it's grass.
All right. This is a public hearing. I have proof of publication of public hearing. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. If there's any members from the public who would like to speak, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Heather or?
We're working through we're talking through the mechanization.
Yeah.
This hasn't been through the Plan Commission, correct? So it's just a first reading.
It has not been through the Plan Commission, and again, as this is a public right-of-way, the responsibility of the vacation falls on your shoulders. That it will not be presented to the Plan Commission.
Yeah, so this will just be a first reading.
So it'll be a first reading here, and then we'll hear it again at the next meeting. Do we need to amend any motion to maintain the utility easement?
If you look at section 3 on the second page, it spells it all out in there. In the last sentence, it even says the rights afforded to the town in this section shall also apply to any and all independent utilities legally operating within the state of Indiana.
All right. Any other questions from counselors? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance 20.
Second.
I got a first from Counselor Norris, a second from Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you. Up next is a consideration of a resolution regarding the appropriation of additional funds. This is Resolution 2024-18, and we have Cindy Poor, Director of Finance and Records, with us for this.
So every year, towards the end of the year, we come before you with additionals, and right after this, it'll be reappropriations, just to clean up some year-end items. The additional appropriations have been advertised, and you should have a copy of the ordinance and the narrative behind it if you have any questions.
Are there any questions from counselors for Cindy? As she mentioned, this is a public hearing. I approve publication of the public notice of public hearing. At this point, I'll open the hearing. If there's any members of the public who would like to speak, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional questions or comments for Cindy? If there are none, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve Resolution 2024-18.
I got a first from Counselor McElderry, a second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next on the agenda is a consideration of reappropriating funds. This is Resolution 2024-19, and we have Cindy with us for this as well.
The difference, the additional appropriations we just did and the reappropriations, we're just moving budgeted funds for a department between lines. And so there are no additional funds being requested. It's just a movement of funds. There may be some lines that were overspent, whereas there were savings in others. And so it's just a matter of moving the money around for year-end cleanup.
All right, are there any questions for Cindy? I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-19.
Second.
A second from Counselor Stein. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is a consideration of a resolution regarding Mulberry Street and Governor's Lane crosswalk. This is Resolution 2024-20, and we have Lance Lance, Director of DPW, to present.
Good morning. The DPW Department, in conjunction previously with the Pedestrian Mobility Advisory Committee, whose function has since been folded into the Pathways Committee, takes a look occasionally at locations around town where a marked crosswalk, including what we call RRFB, rapid rectangular flashing beacons, might be appropriate and well-serving to the community. We basically have a 3-tiered approach to this. First is this even make sense? Is the speed limit 70 miles an hour and there's 5 lanes of traffic? things of that matter. Once it's determined that there's additional consideration, we actually go out and take pedestrian counts in the spring and the fall when the weather is good and school's in session, so we actually get a quantification of the pedestrians using the location. And if that, as when plotted, the vehicle traffic against pedestrian traffic, when it lies above basically a logarithmic curve, it is a location that supports a marked crosswalk. So the last tier of the evaluation process, is there anything that's missing, sight lines or anything else that needs to be corrected? Well, all those conditions being met satisfactorily, the DPW recommends that you consider this as a location for a marked crosswalk. And the reason we are here is because our ordinance dictates that this is an authority vested in you. However, if you read my memo, the very last line is, like so many ordinances, they go back way, way a long time ago, before our governance looked like it is now. And if you want to continue hearing these, and maybe 1 or 2 a year, we're happy to continue as we have been. But if you are also interested in clearing up your agenda, we could bring to you an ordinance amendment that would vest that authority with the mayor. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from counselors?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I appreciate this process that was put in place by the other committee, if you will, as opposed to the Pathways Committee, but it's just logical. It's just logical, and I think that as, you know, you put that three-step process together, and I won't repeat all that you said about that, but it just makes sense. It makes sense. We're going to have traffic volumes increase in certain areas, pedestrian and vehicular. And as we move forward, we need a process to be able to kind of make those improvements. And I personally just want to touch base on I still believe that we should go through this council for these. That's my personal take. That doesn't, you know, that's just me being on the Pathways Committee. And I'd entertain anybody else's opinion on this to get this into the mayor's office moving forward. But I think we all represent different areas of the town, and different areas of the town have different needs. And I think, for example, this location, very close to 2 schools, 3 schools, and then we have the neighborhood, very large neighborhoods on both sides. It's just a logical thing that makes sense. However, I still believe that our constituents can come and ask us to push these forward, and I think that's a good place to keep it at the council level. I don't mean to take too much of your time, but I do believe in that process. It was a great process that was created by the other committee, and I'd like to continue that partially as we move forward with the Pathways Committee, as at least hearing these things as we move forward. So that's my thought. I'm very supportive of this crosswalk in that location, as well as the Pathways Committee currently is as well supportive. And like I said, I kind of like hearing these, and I like the public to hear these as well, because I think the public sometimes doesn't get to hear some of the good things that the DPW is doing, or the council. So that's my thought.
I don't have a question, but thanks, Lance, and your team for the diligence and for this process. I agree with Craig. You know, this is in my district. There are 3 schools right there. There is quite a lot of traffic, and with I love the roundabout there, but the roundabout, you know, if you're trying to get out, or if you're a child trying to get to school, the flow is crazy because it never slows down because of the roundabout. So I think it's much needed, and I appreciate y'all.
Anything else from counselors? This is a resolution, so this is just one vote here, so I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-20.
First from Counselor Melton.
Second.
Second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next are other matters. Are there any other matters from counselors?
President, I'd like to just say thank you to all of the folks that filled out applications to try to get on a board, committee, or commission. I know there's a lot of folks that don't make it on because we have a lot of interest, and we really appreciate people's interest, and I just want to encourage them to continue. There will probably be an opportunity somewhere down the road for those that did not make it onto a board, committee, or commission this time around.
Said. Well said. Anything else from counselors? I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second from Counselor McElderry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 6, 2025, at 7 p.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana Open Door Law. Hope everyone has a Merry Christmas.